Hey, happy Monday. Today is Monday, June 15th, 2020, and today's Bible readings, the selections are Psalm 126, Genesis 23, 1 through 19, and then 1 Thessalonians 3, 1 through 5. That's the first choice. Or you could have read Psalm 105, 1 through 11, and then 37 through 45, and Joshua 1, 1 through 11, and then once again, 1 Thessalonians, same passage. Today I'm going the route of the first choice, whichever. I'm going to take the first choice for the Old Testament reading, and I'm going to look at Genesis 23, 1 through 19. And this is the story of what happened, what Abraham did when his wife Sarah died. You know, Abraham, he was the patriarch of Israel. He's the one that the story of Israel really starts with. And he and his wife Sarah didn't have any children, and God promised him that they would have children of their own. And in their very old age, God stepped up, and Sarah was able to conceive and bear a child. And then this is the story of what happens when she dies. And so Sarah dies, and Abraham, it says, rose up from beside his dead wife, and then said to the Hittites. The Hittites were the people that lived in Canaan at that time. Remember, Abraham was a sojourner in the land that his descendants would later possess, but he was just a sojourner there. So he rose up. He needed a place to bury his deceased wife Sarah, and so it says he went to the locals, to the Hittites, and offered to buy a piece of land. Said, please, one of y'all sell me this piece of land so that I can bury my wife. Well, he was well thought of. It's not like they didn't like him. He was apparently well thought of, and so they were all like, hey, dude, this is a rough time. You know, we can't imagine what you're going through. Here, you can take this land, or just go pick where you want and just go bury your wife, and we'll just give you the land. And Abraham persisted. He said, no, I want to actually buy the land. And so finally he makes a deal with this guy Ephron. Now, here's the deal. This guy Ephron was just going to give him the land. Abraham, if he ever offers to help you go buy a car, don't do it, because he's not really good on haggling on price, because this guy was going to give Abraham this really nice field that had a cave that would have been perfect for a tomb, and he said, here, I'll just give it to you. And Abraham said, first of all, he had also made sure that this all happened in the city gate, where all the elders were gathered and people were coming and going, so that there would be witnesses. That's an important thing later. But Ephron was just going to give him the gate, and Abraham's response was, well, you take 400 for it. So Abraham bargains Ephron down to 400 up to 400 from nothing, I guess you could say, and ends up buying this plot of land, this field, the field of Machpelah, near what is later becomes Hebron, which is kind of, if you look at a map of Israel, present-day Israel, and you find Jerusalem on it, this area would be sort of the southwest of it. And like I said, he purchases the land in front of witnesses. This doesn't happen in a backroom deal somewhere out in the parking lot after church and nobody else is around to listen. Not a good way to do leadership kind of stuff. This happens in front of witnesses in the city gates. That's another important thing to hold on for the future when you're doing your Bible readings. The idea of the city gate is important. That's where business took place. That's where justice was issued out, because it's where the elders would gather and you had witnesses. So all of this happens in front of witnesses so that nobody could say, well, he never paid for that land. There's no really proof it was his, that we were nice and we gave it to him. And so he buys his own land in front of witnesses. And that explains, whether or not you realize it, kind of why he was so reticent to not take the land for free and actually wanted to pay for it upright and upfront, and pay the 400 shekels of silver, I think was the price, which try to find land for that cost in Israel today. Bet you can't. Anyway, so he buys his own land, really, if you think about it. He's paying money for land that's already been promised to him. Because if you go back and you look at the promises and the covenant that God made with Abraham, he had been promised this whole land, not just Hebron, but this whole area that becomes the state, the nation of Israel. Not the necessarily modern. I'm talking about in the Bible, like under David and Solomon. This was all promised to Abraham and his ancestors. I mean, Abraham and his descendants. He's the ancestor. And so this land was promised to him. So he's actually buying his own land. Why not just take the free land? Well, like I said, no one could say then that they made Abraham a landowner or that they made Abraham rich. That honor belonged to God exclusively because of this land that he had promised to Abraham and his descendants. And here's where I think it's really important. I think is important what Abraham is doing here, because it's a land that's been promised to Abraham, a promise made to Abraham and his descendants, but a promise that he in his lifetime never saw fulfilled and never enjoyed in its full fulfillment, because he was always a sojourner in the land, and he himself was buried in this tomb that he purchased from the people of Hebron, from this guy Ephron. So why is that important? I think it's important because Abraham was investing in a future that he would never see. That takes a lot of faith. He's investing in this future that that he had been told about, that he had been promised, but that he himself would never actually see. That's a big thing to step out on faith like that. And so as he lay Sarah to rest in this tomb that he paid for himself before all these witnesses, he was also, I guess, kind of laying the future to rest, because he was really saying that this land is mine, and this whole land is will be the land of my descendants. He's investing in the future, which is kind of something that we're all called to do. We're called to invest in the future regardless of what the conditions of the present are. The present conditions can be incredibly horrible, and you don't really want to think about the future, but we're called as a people of faith and hope to invest in the future regardless of whether or not we'll ever see that investment come to fruition. And there's a good chance that the future hope that you're investing in today, that God is calling you to lay the money down on, that you'll never see that really come to fruition. But that's the kind of people that we're called to be. So, go out today and be like Abraham and kind of do what you can to invest in the future. A future that you might never see, but a future that God's promising. We will see you tomorrow, and you have a good day. Boop.